So there's a lot of discussion that comes up on different Facebook groups and homeschooling groups about whether or not it's possible to homeschool if you have to work, whether that be working from home or working a job outside the home. And as a homeschooling mom who has always had to work full-time outside of the home, I can tell you that it is possible. And today I just thought I would take you through some of the things that have worked really well for us in terms of making that work. Hey everybody, welcome back to My Practically Imperfect Life. If it's your first time here, welcome to my channel. My name's Abby. I'm a homeschooling mom of 2 high schoolers this year. And here on my channel, I just like to share all kinds of things homeschool and mom life related. Today, this topic is one that's very personal to me because, well, this is my life. Working while homeschooling. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about whether or not you can even homeschool if you are a working parent. And when I say working, let me just say that I am in no way saying that a stay-at-home parent is not a working parent. That is definitely its own full-time job. And I have a lot of friends who are stay-at-home parents and they are busy, busy people. But today I thought I would focus more on how we balance things when you have a job, either outside of the home, or if you have a work from home job, or maybe you're a content creator or a small business owner and you run things from home. It definitely just presents its own set of challenges, and you definitely need to do some things differently or plan some things differently to make that balance out if you're planning to homeschool your kids. So a little bit about me. I'm a registered nurse. That's what I've been doing for many years now, and that was a second career for me. I went back to nursing school in my mid-20s and then transitioned to a whole new career field. And nursing is an incredibly rewarding job, albeit a little stressful the last couple of years, that's for sure. But it's one of those jobs that has a lot of flexibility. I could work in the hospital, in an office. I could work out of the hospital. I could work all different kinds of shifts. And I've worked all different kinds of shifts. I've worked full-time days. I've worked full-time nights. I've done 12-hour nights. And most recently, in the last year and a half, I took a job that is an on-call position. So I work after 5 p.m. overnight, but I do 7 days on and 7 days off. So my point with that is that I have been there. I have had to figure out how to homeschool when I wasn't around the majority of the day, or when I worked nights and I needed to try to find a time to sleep and be a functioning human being. And even now, even though my shift right now is probably the most beneficial for our family, it's the one that allows us to most easily do our homeschooling. I still have requirements for work. I still have a certain time of day that I need to be, calling physicians and doing my charting and checking in for things at work. So it is not a 100% flexible schedule. And the habits that we got into, or the things that we were doing to make things run smoothly back when I was working other shifts, are still things that we apply today, just a little bit differently. So I do want to say, if you are considering homeschooling, or maybe you already are homeschooling and you're considering whether or not you should be going back to work, I think you really should start off with a good, honest conversation with your spouse. You need to decide, what your goals are as a family. Do you have certain retirement goals that require both of you to have an income, or both of you to be putting money into retirement? How are your general finances? I know people just hate to talk finances, but it's something that every couple really needs to talk about. Who's paying what bills? Where can we trim things off? How can we make sure that we're meeting the basic needs of our family, or providing things that we want our children to be involved in? My kids golf, which is not a cheap sport. They both also play basketball. They're involved in scouting groups. As a family, we like to travel. We want to take vacations. We live on a rather large kind of country property, so there's a lot of outdoor projects we're doing. There's a lot of home remodeling that we're doing, and all of those things cost money. And yes, inflation is rearing its ugly head the last few years, and that definitely has made every family, I think, have to reevaluate their budget. So have that honest conversation. Do both of you need to work? Do both of you need to work full time? Is it important for one or the other of you to make sure that you're carrying health insurance for your family? For us personally, I have always had to work full time, always. And that's just been our situation. I've held a full-time job since I was 18 years old. And like I said, I've worked a lot of different shifts, but it was just our income. My income has always been necessary for our family. And so I've always needed to work. Would I have loved to have been a stay-at-home parent when my kids were little? I would have jumped at that chance, but it just wasn't there. And even now, I carry health insurance for us because I work in healthcare, and typically healthcare employees get pretty good insurance at a pretty good price, and it just makes sense for our family. Plus, I have 2 high schoolers who are going to college sooner rather than later, and college is expensive. And as much as I would like to say that scholarships will pay for everything, I don't know that. I can hope for it, but I'd rather plan to have money put back to help them through school so they aren't stuck paying off student loans like I was for many years. So talk to your spouse about your family situation and decide what it is you can reasonably do. The other piece of that is talking about whether or not you want to work. And I think that's important to consider, especially since there seems to be a lot in our culture. It kind of pushes one way or the other. First, it was like, if you didn't work, there was something wrong with you. And then it was like, oh, but you're going to homeschool. How dare you work? Well, maybe you want to work. Maybe you don't want to work full time. Would I like to work part time? Absolutely. I'd love to work part time. But I love being a nurse. I would not have gone back to school for it and put myself through all of that if I didn't love what I do. I love taking care of people. I love, seeing that what I do makes an impact on my patients' lives. And I think if I had the choice today to not work at all, I wouldn't take it. I would choose to work. Like I said, maybe not full time, but I still would want to work because being a nurse is just part of who I am. And it's part of what makes me feel, fulfilled in life, is knowing that I'm giving back to people in that way. So there's no harm in saying that, I want to work. Go for it. You can do that. Again, you just might have to figure out how to do things a little differently if you're homeschooling. So once you've made the decision about whether or not you're going to be working, or you've decided that you're going to need to go back to work, you need to really look at your kids' age and their maturity levels for a couple of reasons. First of all, age will determine whether or not your kids can be home alone. Depending on the state you live, you might have restrictions on it, or you might not feel comfortable leaving your kids home alone for certain times of the day. So you need to make sure that you have that part of it covered. But their age also will determine how much independent work they can do. How many subjects can they basically kind of self-teach? And I know that probably sounds bad to somebody who's not really familiar with how homeschooling works, but one of the skills we really try to develop in the kids as they enter middle school, and definitely by the time they get to high school, is self-learning, where they can follow an online program or read sections of a textbook and do assignments and essentially be learning the material in those ways. Not everything is directly taught. Now, if you have younger kids, you need to be looking at how you can arrange your schedule to allow you that direct teaching time. A kindergarten, first grader, second grader, even up to early elementary, they are not going to teach themselves math and reading and writing. Unless you have a genius. If you have a genius, they might. But most kids are not going to teach themselves those subjects. Whereas once they hit middle school, you can start getting them more involved in being independent in how they learn their subjects. And by high school, the majority of the subjects are independent learning. That's how it is in our homeschool, and I'm home during the day now. Now, granted, we do some subjects as a family, and we have always done that regardless of what schedule I have worked. Family Bible studies, family devotions. I teach my kids German, largely because it's one of the only subjects I can't find any other curriculum for other than ones that I teach. We do art history together. We've done nature studying together. We did an apologetics course together. So there are some classes that I chose to direct teach to them, over the last few years. But the majority of their high school classes, like I said, it's kind of self-directed learning and utilizing the materials to basically, kind of teach themselves. So you got to look at your kids' ages for that. The second thing that deals with age is how long school should really take. My kids are high schoolers. If they sat and did school start to finish with no breaks, they'd probably be done in about 5 hours a day. Some days it's a little bit longer if they have a bigger assignment or a bigger project. But again, most of that is on their own. Whereas if you have a lower elementary student, they very well may only need anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours to get those basic classes done. And then anything else you add on top of it would just be a bonus. Even younger, younger elementary students, going up to maybe like 5th, 6th grade, those basic subjects may only take a few hours to do, and then you might choose to add in history a certain number of days a week or science a few days a week. But their school day isn't going to be as long as a traditional public school day. I mean, the public schools in our area, the kids are at school before 8 a.m. and they don't get out till 3 o'clock. But you got to remember they're adding in lunch breaks and they're adding in time between classes, and younger kids have recess, or they might have study hall, they might have a band class and all of those other things. And so their days are long. And when we are able to teach just a few students at a time, you can really keep things moving along at a steadier pace, and you can get things done much more efficiently. So you can look at your kids' ages and figure out, like, how many hours do I really need to have set aside on different days to be able to homeschool them. So maturity and accountability kind of come into play when you have older students who you are hoping will work on independent subjects, perhaps while you're at work. That's how I had to do it when I worked day shifts. I would have certain subjects that my kids would have to work on when I wasn't home. And then we had some subjects that we were working on all together. And I needed to be able to trust that they were going to get their work completed. Now, there are lots of different ways to kind of hold your students accountable for that. Currently, what we do is in their planner, there's a little checkbox under their assignments where I mark off that I have physically seen that the assignment is done. If they do an online program like BJU Distance Learning has online grading for tests and quizzes, and I can go on there and I can see that it's completed. I can see the grade they got on it. Shoreman Math that my son uses, every day when he submits an assignment, it sends me an email telling me that an assignment's been submitted, and I can log on from wherever I am, even though I'm usually home now. But if I'm not at home, I could log on and I could see the assignment. I could see the grade he got on it. I could even see how many attempts he made at doing different problems. So it's an easy way to keep track of that. If you are using an online-based program, a lot of them have that feature where you as the parent can log on and you can be seeing if work is done. But have a way of keeping them accountable. I have two students who are very, very different. One who I could give a list of assignments to, and I have no worries at all that everything will be completed. It just is. And even if she has to leave for part of the day for like a lesson or going and doing something with friends or a family member, and has things left to do, she'll come home and she will just sit down and get it done. My other one, I have to, like I said, physically check each thing each night to make sure it's done. And that's what we do. And I've been really kind of working on kind of like a reward system, like you get your phone time when things are all checked off, or you get video game time when everything is checked off. If you want to go out and do something with friends in the evening, everything needs to be checked off. And so we're just kind of building that sense of accountability in him. So that way, hopefully by the time he's off to college and there's nobody looking over his shoulder, making sure work is done, he just knows that he needs to get it done. So, and that's okay. If your kids are different, that is totally fine. I think we see that in every family. No two kids are the same. And you do have to kind of make adjustments for each kid. So consider their maturity, consider how well they will hold themselves accountable, or how you need to make sure that you're holding them accountable to getting those things done. My next suggestion is to keep on top of your grading if you're keeping grades. Now, middle school, you might be keeping grades. We actually kept grades all through middle school, and that was just so I could kind of track the kids' overall progress on things. And it also just helped them kind of see how they were doing. And high school, we absolutely keep track of grades because those things have to go on their transcript. And grading can get, overwhelming if you don't keep on top of it. Maybe that's grading one day a week. You have like a set evening each week and you do all of the grading from the week. I prefer to grade each day. When I worked partly during the day, I would do the grading, in the evening I would check that things were done as soon as I got home from work, but I'd sit there every evening and I just grade those few assignments. That way it was done, it was entered and I didn't have to worry about it, and I didn't have to worry about things backing up. It is very easy if you're working outside the home or, in the home to say, you know what, I'm just going to push that to tomorrow. And then the next day I'm going to push that to tomorrow. And then I'm going to push that tomorrow. And the next thing you know, you have a week or 2 weeks or longer worth of grading. And a lot of times when your students know that you're not checking things regularly, or you're waiting weeks in between grading things, that you're not going to realize if an assignment or two is missing. So it's helpful to, again, kind of going back to that, holding your kids accountable. If they know you're going to be checking it regularly, they know they better make sure they're having it done and done well on a regular basis, or as things are assigned. And again, it just kind of helps keep you from getting overwhelmed. There's nothing worse than sitting down and having a stack of math assignments to grade. I still have to hand grade all of my daughter's math, and she is in Algebra 2. Last year was geometry. And I can honestly say there is nothing worse than having to grade geometry homework. I do not know how math teachers do it. Doing one a day is enough for me. There is no way I want to sit and grade 4 or 5 of those at a time. So look at your schedule and consider, can I put aside, 20 minutes or 30 minutes in the evening to just sit, get all of the grading done and have it finished? Or do I need to set aside, an hour or so one day a week where I'm getting all of the grading done? So don't get behind on your grading. My next suggestion would be to really look at the different curriculum choices out there. I see a lot of people who choose to kind of go all in on certain programs, like they'll put their kids in all online programs, whether that's with one company or multiple companies. Maybe they're doing all BJU distance learning, or all Easy Peasy, or all Khan Academy. And sometimes that's due to finances, because some programs are certainly cheaper than others. And, sometimes it's because someone doesn't feel comfortable teaching subjects. So there's nothing wrong if that's what you're doing, but you also need to look at, will that, again, work well with your schedule? If your student's doing an all online program, is there a way for you to log in and check their progress? Can you go in and see grades in real time? Can you see assignment completion in real time? How much access do you have as a parent to be able to kind of double check that things are getting done when they need to get done? I'm kind of a strong proponent of doing kind of a mixed bag of curriculum, some that's online and some that's just good old-fashioned textbooks or living books. We do a lot of guest hollow programs where it's a lot of reading from different types of books and projects and things like that. I think that helps, one, keep my kids from getting bored. I think if they stared at computer screens all day long, they would lose their mind. And quite honestly, I don't want them having that much screen time. I'm already trying to make sure I'm limiting TV time and phone time and things like that. But here I am saying, well, I need you to sit and stare at this computer for 5 hours today and do your schoolwork. And I just don't like that. I want them to be in books. I want them to be, physically writing things. I want them to be doing experiments. And so I try to find a mix of things. If you have to split your time, if you're gone certain hours and then there's certain hours you're doing subjects with your kids, it might be beneficial to look for curriculum that can be used in both situations. Are there certain subjects I can have them do online while I'm at work? And are there some things that I can, do with them when they're at home, or that they might need more help with, and we can schedule those subjects when I'm at home? So look at the different curriculum options out there. There are tons and tons and tons of them. One of the greatest resources for looking into curriculum and kind of how it's set up and how different people use it is Kathy Duffy Reviews. It's a free website, and she has looked at like tons and tons and tons of types of curriculum. And she gives a really thorough outline and review of many different ones on her website. That is where, when I first got started homeschooling, that's where I went and I got tons of my information was from there. And I was able to do comparison on different types of curriculum for different subjects and kind of see what things would work or not work for my kids. You know your kids better than anyone else. You know their learning styles, you know where their weaknesses lie and where their strengths lie. So don't be afraid to, pick and choose curriculum, have some things that can be done, when you're working, some things that need to be done when you're home, and make a mix of it. There's no rule that says all of your curriculum has to be from one provider, or it all has to be done one way, or all has to be the other. There's also no rule that says that you cannot make a switch. So if you start off trying something and a few weeks into your school year it's not working, make a change. There's no harm in that. All right, next I'm going to suggest adapt your schedule to work for you. The beauty of homeschooling is that there is no one who tells you that you have to school from this date to that date, and that you must school from 7 to 3, Monday through Friday, and you must take this amount of time off for Christmas break and this amount of time off for this, and you must take this day off and that day off, and oh, if it snows, you have to make up that day. Homeschooling scheduling is what we make it. Depending on your state's rules as far as the number of days, yes, you might have that guidance. Here in Indiana, we have to do 180 days or 36-ish weeks, but we choose to do 5 days a week. That hasn't always been the case, and it hasn't always been a Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. There was times when we did Monday through Thursday and Saturday, or we did Monday through Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then we did Saturday, Sunday. So we've switched the days that we've done school, depending on what worked with my work schedule. You might choose to do school 4 days a week and just go longer into the summer, or maybe you're going to be year-round homeschoolers. There's a lot of homeschooling families out there who are year-round, where they'll do 5 or 6 weeks of school, take a week off, 5 or 6 weeks, take a week off, and then maybe they do a longer chunk off in the summer. And that might be something that sounds appealing for your family and might work well with your schedule. If you have really young kids like kindergarten, first grade, maybe you're doing half days instead of full days. If you work mornings, maybe it's afternoon school. If you work evenings, maybe you're doing morning school. If you have older kids, same thing though. Maybe you're doing your group subjects or your direct taught subjects during those hours you're home, and then they're doing independent work while you're at work. There's no wrong way to homeschool. You can adjust that schedule to work for you. Another popular thing is to take advantage of co-ops. Our area has a lot of different homeschooling co-ops, and several of my kids' friends, they will have 1 day a week where they're taking 3 or 4 classes at that co-op. So they'll be there for several hours doing classes that maybe require a lab that a parent doesn't feel comfortable teaching, or an elective that's being offered. And that's okay too. We've done that. We've done a couple classes at co-ops. And so maybe you're doing school 3 or 4 days a week and you have a co-op day. High school students also have the option to do some dual enrollment. My oldest is only in 10th grade, and so we don't plan to start dual enrollment classes till next year. And even then, I think I'm going to have her do online-only dual enrollment, just because I'm not really sure I'm comfortable with like a 16-year-old being on campus with a bunch of college students, and I don't think she'd be comfortable with that either. But we do plan to have her do some courses as dual enrollment next year, and of course during her senior year. So again, dual enrollment classes are classes she could do while I was working. She could log on and watch the lectures and do the reading and the assignments and things like that. And I know that will be okay because, again, I know her maturity level and I know the way she holds herself accountable to getting things done. So be flexible with your schedule. See what will work for your family. If you need to sit down with a calendar and kind of map out your days and what will work, do that. The one thing I will say is, as you're kind of mapping out the time, when you're going to do school, when do you have work, is make sure, one, that you give yourself a day off. Don't just plan that the days that you're not working are all going to be school days. So if you work, 3 days a week, don't plan to do school all day the 4 days that you're off. You've got to give yourself some time. Maybe that's half of a day. You're doing school in the morning, you're doing a half day kind of to yourself. You need some time to decompress, to relax, take care of other things that you need to get done, whether that's, stuff around the house or just things that you enjoy. Read a book, drink a glass of wine, go out on a date with your spouse. You need to allot that time for yourself. So, make sure that you're not overbooking yourself in that regard. Another thing that's been really helpful for me is planning ahead and doing prep work. My first year homeschooling, I was kind of prepping things like every day. I'd get things ready for the next day and then the things ready for the next day. And I very quickly found out that that was going to make me just lose my mind. It took more time to like get things out and look through them and print them off and set them in drawers and line it all up each day than if I had just done it kind of all at once. And so what I started to do then was doing weekly prep. So I would take 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and I would sit there and I would copy out worksheets and tests. I would make sure all of my lab, like our lab experiments and things like that, all of that stuff was out and ready to go for the week. If there were certain books my kids were going to need to read, I would get those out and set them up. Kind of behind me, you can see my son's subject drawers. My daughter has the same things. I'd put things in the drawers for the whole week so that way they were there, and I'd write everything down in their planner. And that way, you know, they knew that on different days they had to do different things from those drawers. My last year that I worked day shift, day shifts were just really, really tough to balance with homeschooling. It was definitely the most challenging shift to do this with. But I've actually found that monthly prepping was helpful for me at that point. Again, it was just a matter of looking ahead at what was in my planner for the month, printing off all of the worksheets, pulling all of the tests, you know, inventorying that we had things for projects and labs, making sure like if there were videos they needed to watch for class, were they bookmarked on the computer where they could find them, looking over the teacher's materials and just kind of getting an idea of what my kids were going to be doing for the month. And it definitely was, you know, a big job to do, you know, once a month, but I had it all done for the month. And then all I had to worry about was, you know, kind of checking in, tweaking things here and there, and of course, keeping up with grading. But that bulk of prep work was done. Now, my schedule now is much more flexible. Like I said, I'm home during the day, I'm on call, you know, I'm working in the evenings, but I still make sure that I'm prepping in advance. Some things I do a big prep on, like before the school year started, I went and I printed all of the handouts and guided notes and things like that for my daughter's distance learning history course. And I put them all in one big binder for her. So she's got the whole year's worth of guided notes and handouts in a binder for the school year. My son, very similar for his literature course from BJU. All of the quizzes, all of the teacher helpers like worksheets, all of the vocabulary pages, everything is in a binder for him. And he just has to flip to the next one each day. So it was a big project to do initially, but it's done. It's done for the whole year. I don't have to be, you know, looking things up and pulling out teacher CDs and finding things on the website and printing them off and making sure that I get them in a binder and things like that. That's all done. And then smaller prep work, I continue to do at least on a weekly basis. Like I said, I put aside like an hour or two on Sunday afternoons. I just fill out planners. I inventory things. I put books in drawers. I get all of the group subject stuff we're doing kind of ready to go, set out. I make sure that I've reviewed it all so I'm prepared to teach it. And that's just helped me, you know, being a planner, kind of knowing where we're going with things, having the materials done in advance. And so we still have that flexibility with things, but again, it is just nice to have things prepared in advance. The next thing that we do is we really utilize our village. What do I mean by that? I have my kids are fortunate. We have grandparents and great-grandparents in the area who they are very close to all of them. And we have utilized them to help us get rides to and from co-op classes, to and from sports practices and sporting events, to their golf lessons and things like that. If I needed somebody to be here, you know, to, you know, make sure that they were finishing tests and things like that, and or supervising an experiment and I couldn't be there, you know, I would ask one of them if they could come and they could be there and just kind of, you know, be a set of eyes, be a helping hand and things like that. So, you know, take advantage if you have other friends who are homeschoolers, if you have family members in the area, ask them to help, because a lot of times they won't realize, you know, that they can help until you ask them. If you have a family member maybe who's particularly good at a subject, You can ask them to help teach it. I'm teaching chemistry to a friend of my daughter's, and it's just because chemistry was one of my college majors and I enjoy teaching it. And so they do the labs together and they go through the book together and things like that. You can do different things like that, and that takes a big weight off when you know that you have some help. I know that not everybody is fortunate enough to have family in the area or a lot of help available, but take a look around and see what is there. Co-op classes, homeschooling groups, a homeschooling field trip group, play groups, things like that. If your kids are involved in a sport, get to know the other parents, and maybe you can help each other back and forth with rides and things like that. And just don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. Your spouse should also be a partner in this, especially if you're also working, whether that's from home or outside the home. Everybody lives in this house. That's what I always say. Everybody lives here. Everybody's responsibility to help keep the house clean, to keep the house rolling, to make sure things are done. It's not all on me. I mean, I work full time. I cannot also homeschool and take care of the house all by myself and keep my sanity. Everybody has to pitch in different ways. So talk to your kids and give them expectations of how they should be helping out, depending on their ages. Talk to your spouse. Let them know what you need help with. Do you need them to lead school on a given day of the week? Maybe the two of you are splitting it. Maybe mom's teaching 2 days a week, dad's teaching 2 days a week, however you choose to do it. But let them know what it is you need. Do you need a few hours to be able to do some prep work and get some things done? And maybe they need to take care of dinner and getting the kids to bed and whatnot, so they can do that. So talk to them. Let them know what it is that you need from them. Because I can tell you, I have yet to meet a guy who can read a woman's mind. If you have one, if you're married to someone who can read your mind, you're very fortunate. A lot of times I think they want to help us, our spouses want to help us, but they need us to tell them what it is we need help with. And usually once we say it, then they're more than willing to jump in and do it. So utilize your village, whatever your village looks like. So the last thing I want to say is give yourself some grace in all of this. It is not easy being a parent, no matter what. We all have hard days. We all have moments of frustration and moments when we feel like we're failing. And when you have that set of responsibilities at home, and then you add on top of that a set of responsibilities to a job, it can be very draining. I know at the end of I do 7 days on, 7 days off. So at the end of my 7 days, I'm mentally and physically exhausted. I'm just worn out. And then my week is starting all over again with homeschooling and home responsibilities and things like that. And sometimes it's hard to motivate myself. It's hard to say, you know what, I've got to get up and smile and teach and, make breakfast and plan dinner and get the kids here and get the kids there. And oh yeah, the laundry's all piled up and things like that. Whew. And I have to remind myself that it's okay. It's okay to feel the way I do. It's okay to leave some things undone. It's okay to ask for help. That's probably my biggest thing, is remembering that I can ask for help. There will be times, if you're working in homeschooling, there are going to be times when you feel like you're not meeting your kids' needs. There will be times when you feel like a failure. Maybe you, like you said, you go to grade some assignments and you find some things are missing. And those are usually, moments when you just combination, you feel really frustrated with your kids, you feel frustrated with yourself. And those are all normal feelings to have. But it's also a great time to kind of evaluate how you're doing things. Look back on those things I talked about earlier. When are we doing certain subjects? How are we doing them? What curriculum are we using? What do we need to do differently to make sure that things are getting done and that my students' needs are getting met? So give yourself grace in all of this, because the Lord gives grace to us, and we should also give some grace to ourselves. So I hope amidst all of my ramblings today, I gave you some advice or some ideas on how you can make homeschooling work for you if you're a working parent. If you are interested in any more specifics, how we did scheduling and subjects and things like that when I was working the different types of shifts, you are welcome to leave a comment, and I'd be happy to send you a message and give you some more information on those. Like I said, our homeschool has always been very fluid in how we've done it, depending on what my work schedule looked like, and the days of the week I was off, or the times of the day I was off, and the age of my kids. So we've really kind of gone through many different ways of homeschooling and ways of scheduling, and I'm always happy to share kind of what worked and what didn't work for us, to anyone who's interested in hearing more. But again, if I can emphasize one point, is that do not let the fact that you have to be working a job, whether that's from home or as a business owner or outside of the home, don't let that discourage you from homeschooling. It's one of those things that you can do. It just takes planning, it takes flexibility, and it takes asking for help sometimes to make it work. So everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. If this video was helpful to you, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and then you can be notified when I post new content. Thanks so much, everybody, and I will see you in the next one.